Hi everyone, welcome to Delights to Share, and today's video is on my tuna empanadas recipe. You know, an empanada is typically a savory pastry filled with meats, cheese, veggies, or any combination of the three. They're very popular in Central America and South America as a snack or a meal. I'll show you how to make the dough and the tuna filling. Really delicious and addictive, I have to admit. I'll start going over the tuna filling ingredients. I'll use 2 cans of tuna with its water, chopped onions, any oil, I like olive oil, tomato paste, and water. I'll also use for the tuna filling raisins, 2 hard-boiled eggs, green olives, and for spices I'll use cumin, garlic powder, and salt. So I begin by heating oil in my frying pan on medium heat, and to this I add 1 cup of chopped onions and sauté until they're soft and transparent. This takes about 5 minutes. When the onions are done, I add the 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, and I like to cook the tomato paste for another 2 minutes, stirring with the onions and the oil. I then add the 2 cans of tuna with all the water it came with. This tuna is a little chunky, but that's okay. I'll just break it up with my spatula and mix it into the onions and the tomato paste. And I let it saute for another 2 to 3 minutes. Then I add the teaspoon of salt, the half teaspoon of cumin, and half teaspoon of garlic powder. I stir, and then I add a 1/3 cup of water. When the juices begin to bubble, this is when I add the raisins. This hot liquid helps the raisins soften up so they're not rubbery and hard inside the empanada. Then I let this simmer until most of the liquid begins to evaporate. I then add the half cup of green olives, which I've sliced. I give it a stir. Then I add 2 hard-boiled eggs, which I've chopped into small pieces. I give it a stir as well, and at this point I turn off the heat and continue mixing all the ingredients. I like to squeeze the egg yolks into the mixture while I'm stirring so the yolk disappears into the filling. I've noticed that this helps absorb any remaining liquid in the tuna filling. Before I make the dough, I first prep a cornstarch mixture, which I'll use after the dough is made. And this mixture helps create layers and makes the dough flakier. So I just use a 1/4 cup of cornstarch and 2 teaspoons of baking powder, that's it. Now I'll start with the actual empanada dough. I mix half a cup of water and a half cup of vegetable oil in the same measuring cup. In a large bowl, I add 1 egg and I beat it with a whisk. Then I add that water and oil mixture I just prepared. Continue mixing, and I add a teaspoon of salt and I stir. Now the flour. In total, I'm going to use 3 cups of flour for this recipe, but I add 1 cup at a time. First whisking, then stirring, and finally kneading with my hands until it becomes a dough. As you can see, my first cup I stir with a wire whisk since it's still rather creamy. But when I add the 2nd cup of flour, a little at a time, I switch to a spoon because the mixture becomes denser. Finally, when I add my 3rd cup of flour a little at a time, I eventually switch to using my hand so I can begin to knead it until it all comes together. Remember that with the oil it has, it begins to pull away from the sides and it really doesn't stick to your hands. Okay, once this dough is formed, I'm going to start creating layers in it with that cornstarch mixture I just made. I sprinkle flour on my surface and place the dough on it, adding more flour on the dough as well. And with the rolling pin, I roll it out into a rectangle of about 15 inches in length and 12 inches in width. Continuously, I add flour under the dough and on the dough so it doesn't stick. And as you see, it doesn't have to be a perfect rectangular shape. Here's the cornstarch mixture I prepared a while ago. I add handfuls at a time on top of the dough and spread it all over to cover the entire surface. Make sure there's a good quantity of cornstarch. Then I start folding the dough from the bottom edge using 2 inches of dough at a time until I reach almost the upper edge. Then I bring the upper edge down on the flat roll I created and seal it with my fingers. I then fold it 2 more times inward, creating 3 more layers. Press it together, and here's my dough. I add more flour to my surface and to my dough. And with the rolling pin, I slowly start rolling out the dough until I make another rectangle of about 10 inches in length and 8 inches in width. I cut this dough in half because I'm only going to work with 1/2 of the dough at a time to make the actual empanada discs. Adding more flour, I roll out this 1/2 of the dough into a rectangle until the dough is about 1/8 of an inch thick. And this piece of dough is going to come out into about 16 inches in length, 12 inches in width. Here we go. I sprinkle some more flour on the dough and I'm ready to cut it into discs. I'm just using a plastic lid from a jar, which is about 4.5 inches in diameter. And once I begin marking the dough, I can remove each disc, and I make sure I sprinkle flour between each of the discs when I'm stacking them up. This way they won't stick together. With the leftover dough, I bring it all together and I continue rolling it out to make more discs. Out of these scraps, I was able to make about 4 more discs. And I continue doing this until all the scraps are used. Remember the flour between each of the discs. Now I continue the same process with the other half of the dough I had cut and set aside. I add flour to my surface and to the dough, and I roll it out the same way I did the first half until it comes out into a 12 by 16 inch piece of dough, 1/8 of an inch thick. In total, this recipe makes about 24 discs, but this amount is really dependent on the size of your disc cutter. Okay, now I preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and I'm going to start building the empanadas. I have water and I brush it all along the edges of the disc first. This helps to seal the empanada. And then I place about 2 to 3 teaspoons of filling on the disc. Now I fold the disc in half and I press the edges tight to make sure it seals well, and so the dough on the edges have to be also completely flat. Then I make an additional seal by folding the dough over and over again along the edges, giving it this nice appearance. And it looks even better when you bake it with this type of design. Let me show you how I do another one. I paint the sides with water. I place 2 to 3 teaspoons of filling. Here I think I put too much filling, so I'm just going to scoop out the excess. Yep, that's too much, so I'll just scoop it right out. And then I squeeze the edges as flat as possible. The flatter the better to make these folds. So I fold it forward and squeeze. I fold forward and squeeze all along the edge. It gets easier with practice. Now with this recipe, I was able to make 14 empanadas with tuna filling. And the leftover empanadas, I just put them in the freezer. Next, I brush each empanada with a beaten egg, and off to the oven goes for about 30 minutes at 375 degrees Fahrenheit until the dough is slightly browned. And here they are baked. The empanadas are hot from the oven, so I let them cool on a rack. Now it's the time to taste them. Here, I'll break one in half for you so you can see that the dough is flaky with a few layers, and there are bits of eggs and olive and raisins amidst the tuna. Absolutely delicious. They're just so good. I hope you try my empanada recipe, and if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel so I can share more recipes with you. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for coming, and bye for now.